Let's talk about muscles in general and get more specific with the muscles of the torso and pelvis. So, first of all, your muscles are interdependent convex forms. They have an origin, which is a relatively stationary attachment, and an insertion, which is a relatively movable attachment, and an action, which is what the muscle does when you contract those 2 points. The muscles have mass, which is what makes them convex forms. And even if you're vegan, you've probably eaten with someone and seen them pull a little bit of something stuck to the meat if they're eating a piece of chicken. That's either an origin or an insertion of a muscle. Origins and insertions are important because if you understand where the muscle starts, the origin, and where it goes to, the insertion, you basically drawn it if you follow those points from A to B or O to I. If you're having trouble drawing part of the body, it's probably because you're having a little trouble understanding the part of the body. So the point of anatomical understanding is to help you understand the structure that you're seeing. What you think you're seeing is the beginning of your drawing. So this is really to help you clear up your understanding of what you're looking at so that you can make better decisions when you're drawing. So let's start looking at the muscles of the torso, starting with the pectoralis major, your pectoral muscles. They originate from your sternum and medial, meaning the middle part of your clavicle, and insert on your humerus. And I want to look at them a little more detail from one of these books. So here are a few books that I would recommend to you. The one on the right is the required one for class. And the one in the middle is by Dr. Paul Richet, who is a French Academy anatomist. It's a very thorough book. We'll take a look at some drawings from that later. And the one on the right is by Elliot Goldfinger, who is a sculptor. So he goes into a lot of detail. It's an expensive book. I didn't want to require you to do it, but I want to show you some things from this book because he's so thorough. So what he's showing you here is the origin insertion of the muscle itself, the pectoralis major on the left, then the muscle in isolation, the second image. The third image is the muscle with the other muscles around it. And on the right, we have a photograph of a male, so shows the muscles as they appear on surface form. Then we have the same thing from the side. So it's a very thorough book. So for your bone and muscle charts, we're going to start with the pectoralis major. I have the skeleton underneath here. I have a piece of tracing paper. You guys are going to draw your skeleton. And what I have is a color race red colored pencil. You notice on a lot of charts, the main muscle fiber is red. Sometimes where there's a lot of tenon, it goes to white or yellow. So starting with the pectoralis major, we know where it goes from. It goes from the middle of the sternum. So for your charts, I just want you to do half of it, right? It's half as much work for you, easier for me to see that you understand where the muscles are going from and to. So the pectoralis major goes from the clavicle here, sternum to the bottom here, a little bit of abdomen, and it inserts over here on the humerus. So what you want to do is just have your lines go from the origin to the insertion. So we're just going to start and use the line direction to show that you understand where things are going from and to, right? Because the point of this is to help you understand structure. So I'm just going to make lines carrying down where this goes from and to, right? And then I'll label it, right? Pectoralis major. So next we're going to talk about your external oblique, which is this sort of love handle muscle. The origin, those little dots along the rib cage. So you'll notice this is a spiral shape, a spiral form muscle. It goes from the front of your rib cage near the bottom of your sternum to the side of your rib cage near the bottom of your rib cage. So it inserts along the pelvis and that sheath in the middle of your abdomen. And that middle abdominal sheath is actually tenon, so that's part of the thing that gives you definition if you work very hard on your abdominal area. The external obliques have to do with rotation, like all the spiral form muscles, so if you contract these 2 points, you rotate your shoulders to the side in relation to your pelvis. So now for your chart, we know the external oblique it originates from about here near the bottom of the sternum on the rib cage at the front and kind of spirals around to the side and inserts in a line right down like this, and the bottom of the on the bottom of the pelvis. So we see it mostly in prominence here, right? So it kind of comes down like this, sort of love handle muscle, right? So the muscles here, there's more tendon here. So for this one, we'll just sort of loop it down like this towards the, we want to save some room for the abdominal muscles here, right? So here's your external oblique. So I'm just making the lines go towards this, which is the insertion here, right? But I'm leaving a little room for the abdominal muscles here. So the next muscle we'll look at is your rectus abdominis, your abdominal muscles. Rectus just means straight in Latin, and abdominis is your abdomen, so it just means the one that goes straight along your abdomen. So the origin, the little O on the pelvis there, is at the bottom, and the insertion is at the top. And you can see the muscle mass and then the muscle in context there. And the action is that it flexes you at the trunk, right? It helps you bend over. Now, the rectus abdominis, it originates down here, right? At the bottom of the pelvis and goes up to here. So it's the one that goes straight along your abdomen, and there is a lot of tendon here. So as we start to just indicate the direction of the muscle, maybe just leave a little bit of gap for where all the tendon is to sort of show that our skeleton's been doing his exercises and has some definition here. There's a longer one down here at the bottom. And then we can just make an indication where that goes to and tighten it up a little bit with the external obliques from before. Let that label go to. Now, I'm using the color erase pencil. One of the nice advantages as I want to clean this up and fix things later is that it does erase. So I recommend this as a pencil to use for your charts. So the next muscle is the largest muscle on your back, your latissimus dorsi. And it originates down the middle of your spine from near the bottom of your scapula and the back of your pelvis and a little bit of the bottom of your rib cage and inserts to your humerus. Your lats act in counterpoint to your pectoral muscles. They help you pull your arms back, like if you're rowing. And your muscles all act in counterpoint. So as you learn more about the muscles, it's important to remember that. And you really want to use your understanding to emphasize and make the gesture more clear. So here's some other views of the lats, how they look in context of the other muscles. Here's from a different reference from the Richer book showing the latissimus dorsi. One of the tricky things about the back is that muscles are layered. So I may leave a little window or cross contour to show the muscles that run up the spine. And above the lats, that muscle that comes down in the middle there is your trapezius. So I want to also save out a little bit of area for that. So you can see if I'm working on a chart and just trying to put in the lats, I want to kind of leave a little room to put these things in. So I'll speed up the video a little bit as I go along with you, including these muscles. So the next muscle to talk about is the erector spinae, sometimes also called sacrospinalis. So this is the muscles that run up the sides of our spine like two snakes, and they basically hold us up. So they originate back of the pelvis and sacrum up to the bottom of the rib cage and insert on the upper part of the spine up along the sides all the way up to the mastoid process, which is that top little dot at the side of the skull. So when you're putting them in your chart, you can see they're underneath other muscles. So to account for them, you can see what they've done here is just sort of cross contour, which means just curving your lines over to show what's underneath. So even though this group of muscles is underneath, they're very important muscles. They act in counterpoint to your abdominal muscles and hold us upright. What those muscles look by themselves, and when I add them onto my chart, I'm basically going to just cross contour over and sort of have a placeholder to make sure I keep them in mind as I'm laying the other muscles over them. Let's look at the trapezius, which originates at the bottom of the rib cage all the way up the spine to the back of the skull and inserts out on your scapula and clavicle. And trapezius, a trapezoid is a four-sided shape. It's a fairly large muscle. If you contract these 2 points, this helps you pull your shoulders back and raise them. So if you shrug when someone asks you a question, then you're using your trapezius. And it goes over the lats a little bit and over, again, your sacrospinalis erector spinae. So your trapezius originates from basically like the back of your skull here, down your spine, and inserts over here on your scapula and a little bit of your clavicle. So if I'm adding it in, I'm just going to cross contour these. Right? Just sort of follow, like almost kind of connecting the dots from the origin to the insertion. And maybe I could do a little extra bump there because we have the erector spinae underneath, right, coming up. And going a little bit darker. So in between the trapezius and the latissimus dorsi are a couple of muscles. The largest is the infraspinatus, which goes from, you can see most of the back of your scapula to your outside of your shoulder on your humerus. That would help you, let's say you were rowing, it just sort of helps you pull your shoulders back. There's the second largest muscle underneath it is the teres major. There's a teres minor, which is a little one up above it. So let's just worry about the teres major and infraspinatus, because those two, it also goes from scapula to humerus, and it also helps you to pull your shoulders back. So these are muscles that would help you if you were rowing. We can also see here that the insertion of these muscles is underneath that large muscle on your shoulder, the deltoid, which we'll talk about more later. But for now, we just want to maybe mark off where that deltoid is going to go so we can save. I'll quickly add these into the chart. So we've been talking about these interdependent convex forms of the muscles and their origins, where they go from, their insertions, where they go to, and their actions and what they do. And as you draw them, you notice they all have mass. And what that means for your drawings is that there's no concave lines on the body for the sake of drawing. So if you look at this Raphael drawing pretty closely, you'll notice where you might be tempted to make a concave line, he always makes a set of convex lines because he's always taking into account the muscle mass. That's a subtle thing, but it's something that can really help your drawing. If we take a closer look at this, so concave, of course, like a concave lens goes inwards, convex outwards. So if you look at the neck here, where you might be tempted to make a concave line, Raphael's making a set of convex lines. And same thing with the back is arched. He doesn't go concave into the form, he's always coming out of the form. So if you look at more of his drawings, another thing he's doing is using his understanding of anatomy to sort of distill into having each of these lines, when he finally carves them out, show where a muscle goes from and to. So your understanding of the structure can really help you make your drawings more clear and well understood. So we'll go back and look at that Michelangelo drawing that we started with, and just end by saying the anatomical information we're going over is to help you understand the figure and really show the action more clearly. I hope this is useful, and we'll talk about most of the major muscles that affect surface form to come.